So welcome to our first look at the new Ping G440 range. So Jack here went to a fitting event with Ping, did a bit of pre-testing, and we've got a bit of the tech info on them as well. So we're going to combine the two together. I'll talk a bit about the tech changes, and then Jack can fill in the blanks as to his experience hitting them. So start off with the drivers. Driver-wise, the carbon fly wrap. Now this is something that Ping had on the G430 and the LST, where essentially it's a carbon weave that wraps all the way around from the toe, through the crown, and into the heel side. So it's a complete wrap around the top. They say this was something that was only done the LST last year in the 430, but on this series it's across all of them. And generally looking at around about 3 grams worth of weight saving, which doesn't sound an awful lot. It's 1 or 2% of the head weight. But combined with a couple of the other changes, that actually starts to add up to something quite useful. So that goes across all the heads. Now that will have, and we'll come on to this later on, a bit of an effect on the sound. And the sound is something that Ping are quite excited about across all their woods, being a little bit, shall we say, kind of more muted. I think that's the terminology that they're using. But we're going to go on to a couple of the other bits of tech first. And one of the big ones that Ping are talking about this year is the free hosel design. Now this is where the channel that the sleeve goes into within the head, this is where there's actually a kind of a section taken out of it. This saves 4 grams. It serves a few purposes. Obviously there's a weight saving element to it, but rather than the complete sleeve, by taking that chunk out, they've very slightly hardened the adapter, but it is compatible with previous models, G430, G425, G410, any of those series are all compatible with it. But they've hardened it slightly. That weight saving also, or taking that section out, also creates a little bit more flexion in the heel side of the club head as well. So I think what we're going to see from this series is better performance on the heel side. Now you've hit this. Was that something that you felt you noticed?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the big factors was that when you did strike one out the heel, you could see that the ball speed retention was a lot more solid than what we've seen from the 430. You didn't actually see the spin pop up as much as you'd maybe expect as well. So it definitely felt more solid out the heel without actually losing too much on the toe side as well. Felt as if it was very balanced across the face. And
certainly one of the stories from Tour, one of their Tour players who has a natural heel strike, actually gained about 4 miles an hour. This is coming from some of the Tour testing in Australia. But that also goes with some of the changes in structure that Ping have made to the head. So that weight saving of 3 grams in the crown, 4 grams in the hosel, that actually allows us that internal positioning of weight to be a little bit more exacting. Now they have made the back weight a little bit heavier. So of the 7 grams saved in the head through the crown and the sleeve, there's 6 or 7 grams more in the back weight. So again, dragging that weight back, improving the stability of the head on off-center strikes. It's also a slightly thinner, shallower face. So shallower first. Shallower allows them to go a little bit thinner because if you make the face slightly smaller, you can go thinner and not get the face illegal. So if they kept the face the same size and went thinner, it would deflect more. The face would then go above the CT level that they're allowed to. So by making it a bit smaller, it's actually allowed them to improve the tech a little bit, saves a little bit more weight. So again, that whole weight distribution story around the G440 continues through the face as well. So within the range as well, the SFT didn't previously have a 9-degree head, now added the 9-degree, and I think you were saying about the higher speed players this is really geared towards.
Yeah, definitely. I think that being able to have the 9-degree option allows for players that don't want to see that higher launch. They've got maybe a little bit more speed, they don't want to see the spin kind of going off track. So you can still get that kind of guidance, not wanting to see that slice shape, but with a little bit more swing speed. So it definitely caters to some more golfers.
Yeah, and I think that's really a trend across the whole range, is that the heads, the 440 launches just really say a little bit higher than the 430. And certainly that's Ping's information as well, is seeing slightly higher launches, which is allowing players to play a little lower loft to keep the spin in check, but also keep ball speed up. And fighting a fade is not just the preserve of the moderate speed golfer, high speed golfer as well. So that 9-degree head really helping with that. And as you can see on the SFT, we've got the 2 weight positions. So in the standard position, it's still a draw bars, and then there's the draw bars plus, essentially in that heel position. And then all on the Max and the LST, we have that same 3 kind of heel / draw bars, neutral, toe/fade bias position, but a little bit of a narrower channel than in previous models because of the extra weight in that back weight. It doesn't need to be moved quite as far in order to create the same amount of gearing change off centre. So I think across the woods, I think you said a little bit more of a definite change in shape. LST just that little bit neater.
I'd say so, just a little bit more compact compared to last year's model.
And certainly there's the Ping G series, the black and the blue.
Yeah.
They're going slightly more subtle with the colouring this year. Some people will like it, some won't.
Yeah.
But big stories are weight saving in the sleeve, weight saving in the crowns of the Max and the SFT, a little bit more launch, and the sound. So sound-wise, we'll give this to the younger man to hit. The Pings have been known for being actually quite tinny sounding.
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to say other models have had a kind of quieter, softer feel off the face, and the Ping's always had that noticeable little bit of a kind of high-pitched note. So let's see how this one sounds. Yeah, and that's really noticeably less of that high-pitched note. That's a nice drive, noticeably less high-pitched note, where the Pings have always, let's say, I think relative to other models in recent times, have had that little bit more, what one might call tinniness to them. That's a much more muted note, and I think that's gonna a lot of other players are gonna like that. So those are the drivers. Let's move on to the fairway woods. So fairway-wise, Ping have always been really well known for being great off the ground. Shallow ahead, low CG, picks the ball up really well. The one criticism they've had over the years has been off the tee, the face is a bit shallow.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we've seen in the fitting bays.
Definitely.
Is how good they're off the ground, but if you're playing off the tee, it just looks like you're going to go under them. So Ping have addressed that with this series. So they've kept the carbon flyer up on the fairways. That's something they did with 430. But this is again where that free hosel design has saved that little bit of weight. And that's allowed them to go a little bit taller on the face, but keep the CG nice and low. So normally you go taller on the face, you raise the centre of gravity, it makes it launch lower, spin a little bit more, but generally makes it less forgiving.
Yeah.
By saving the weight here, the weight saved here has gone low, but allow them to go taller on the face and not raise up that CG. So in principle, best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
They've also added in, as this one is here, they've added in the forward. So as you can see that small number on the bottom here, Ping historically have just done 3 wood, 5 wood, 7 wood, 9 wood. The forward adding in, I think, is a really good change. Meaning, we're doing a lot more 4 wood, 7 wood, or 5 wood, 7 wood combinations. But to have that versatility, to not have to compromise face angle, I think that's going to be a big win for Ping this year.
Yeah.
The other element, in terms of from a design point of view, it's a little bit more of a rounded sole. So this is where, as we just mentioned, when you're going kind of up or down in loft, the face angle changes, and the previous models have tended to be really noticeable how they've sat closed and open. But that's something that by softening and rounding off the sole shape, it actually softens off how that sits, how the angles really change. So if you've got a very kind of sharp, flat sole, and you add loft to it, it sits on the back edge and it kicks it over even more. Or if you de-loft it, it sits up, and then when you ground it, it sits on its back edge, opens the face up even more. Actually, by rounding and softening off the shape of the sole, it quietens off some of that changeability in terms of the way it sits. So that's going to help it look a little bit less different when you're going up and down in loft. But certainly, all changes were really trying to maintain the performance of the 430 off the deck, but visually give a little bit more confidence there.
Yep.
And again, that's something that you've hit these. I've not hit them outdoors. You've hit them outdoors. Relative to where you felt 430s picked the flight up, noticeable change?
Well, I use a 433 wood myself, and I would always say that it's a club that I feel like needs a little bit extra launch for me. So bringing out an option like a 4 wood, I think definitely it's going to fill that gap between the 3 wood and the 5 wood. I think that in terms of launch off the ground, I've definitely seen an improvement, definitely a little bit more launch without spinning it too much.
Yep.
I think that's probably just with that CG position staying low, slightly deeper face. I think the product seems really, really solid. I think on off-centre strikes as well, it retained numbers really nicely.
Again, the free hosel design, that losing that little bit, material here, allowing that a little bit more flexion out of the heel side. And that's actually something that just improves performance out the heel, where traditionally Ping have been very stable and, one better, very safe. But have been a little bit weaker on that heel side. So it'll be fascinating to get players in the bay and see, right, where does that ball speed now compare to some of the models that have always been stronger on a heel strike. But I don't think we're going to see that knuckleball out the toe from Ping either.
Yeah,
so
I think as well, it's in the bay for us, it's going to be, like as you said, really good for us to be able to have something without having to manipulate the face. Being able to fill the gap between the 3 and the 5 with it all. For more players, they'll be able to see better performance.
And they've also maintained, the other tech that's maintained is the face wrap. So where the face structure wraps around into the sole, which maintains ball speed and launch and therefore spin consistency as Ping term it, low on the face. So that's a tech that's carried over as well. Those changes apply to both SFT and Max. LST, now 430 had an LST, 440 has an LST. So we've got the same very heavy sole plate, which gets the CG nice and low. That helps it be playable off the ground. Now this one, the structure's changed a little bit more. So it's a bit more of a multi-material construction, and I believe this has come out, maybe even stronger than they expected it to.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I mean, 430 LST was designed really to take, for their tour players, part of it was to take the TaylorMades, the kind of the QI10 Tour or the the equivalent of the M1 or the Stealth Plus out of their tour players' hands and give them the ping club that goes into that section. It's kind of almost like this one's almost like a 2-wood in terms of how it spins. It's very, very strong, but material-wise, it's a different construction. So there is a high strength titanium face, so it's a very different sound to the standard 440 heads, but this is a bit of a bomber.
Yeah, I'd say it definitely feels a little bit more harsh off the face, but you can see it just tries to take off. The ball speed's definitely a little bit higher than what you'd see from the Max, but whether you actually get to retain the spin, especially on toe side strikes, it might struggle to stay in the air that way, but yeah, it's really hot off the face. Yeah,
and it's got a tungsten sole plate. It's a titanium 811 titanium body frame to it. It's got the carbon fly wrap. But it's got and I'm going to get the terminology right, so forgive me looking off camera on this one. I want to make sure I get the material right. It's an H220 face. So it's a particularly strong material, which allows them to go thinner, which allows the ball speed. There's not the same limitations on fairways and hybrids as there are on drivers from a ball speed off the face point of view. Once you go over a certain loft and under a certain size, essentially the effect of that thin face is lessened. So it's not the same impact as putting this face on a driver would be. They would be illegal if they did that. So they've gone to this new material. It's higher strength, and that's the key thing that gets that extra bit of pop, allows them to go thinner, gain ball speed, across the face ball speed, but also maintain consistency and performance across the face as well. And we had a brief hit of this a moment ago, and because I hadn't hit this previously when I saw the samples earlier in the year. This is low spin. It's what it says on the tin, but this is really strong, and it's a little bit more. It's a little bit different note off the head because of the construction. So, the carbon fly wrap on the SFT and the Max are kind of keep that slightly sort of softer, dampened sound. This one, because of the titanium construction, tungsten sole, and that high strength face, has more of a poppy kind of note off of it.
Yeah, definitely. It's a little bit louder. It's more like a cannon. Slightly different to the Max and the SFD, but if that's what you're looking for, for an off the tee club that's gonna go as far as you can possibly stretch it, then it's a great option to put in the bag.
So potentially for someone who's a little bit weaker with the driver and wants an off the tee alternative, not cheap because of the construction, pretty close to driver cost, it certainly was last year with the 430, then very, very strong contender in this club there.
So this year Ping have decided that they're going to progress their hybrids from their 2 hybrid up to their 6, does it go to 7 hybrid, with kind of progression of player ability. It's going to start off with a fade bias head in the 2 hybrid, 3 and 4 hybrid a little bit more neutral, and then 5, 6, 7 hybrid, a bit more of a draw bias. Promote that a little bit extra launch and have a bit of a more smooth progression into the irons, especially for maybe the higher handicap players who are taking the hybrid to a 7 hybrid and then going into 7, 8 iron in the irons.
Yeah, and I think it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? The player that wants the 17-degree 2 hybrid is not going to want the same flight characteristics, or highly unlikely to want the same flight characteristics as the player wanting the 27° 6 hybrid. So they kept carbon fly wrap on the hybrids, that's still there. The face wrap for the spin consistency, that's still there. The free hosel design, saving weight in the hosel, that's still there across all the woods and the hybrids. But yeah, if you're wanting a 17° head, then you're not necessarily going to want it to launch up. If you're wanting a 27° head, the last thing you want is low fade. Yeah. So they've sort of said, actually, who is each of the heads for in terms of loft profile and player profile. And as you say, graduated that performance, more launch, more drawbars as you go up and loft. And you've still got the option to add loft, take loft off, flatter lie, neutral lie. So you've still got the versatility of that hosel position to help fine tune that as well. So hybrid wise, it's the carbon fly wrap already been done in the 430, face wrap into the sole already been done in the 430, and the free hosel design, the weight saving has been placed low and central. Again, keep the CG low, keep the launch up, not let the spin flare up too much from a distance point of view. And I think the other thing that's noticeable in this one is the head shape. To me, versus 430, that's noticeably a little different.
I would say so. I think from having a little hit at the clubs, obviously, at the demo day, it looked to me like it was a little bit more compact. And you could noticeably see as well that just going over the crown there, that it did have a little bit more of a ridge to it as well.
A little more of a peak up and
just
over.
A little bit. I thought it looked really appealing actually to hit. It looked really easy to play. We had a little bit of a play about going with the lower loft and the higher loft, and you can definitely see a difference between performance. I think they actually do subtly look a little bit different as well as you move up in the loft, not just only that little bit extra loft, face looking a bit more shut, but also just the head design looking a little bit different as well.
Yeah, there'll be an image side by side to show as well, but for me, the 440 being that little bit shorter heel to toe, but a little bit broad, a little bit deeper front to back, which again, I think visually, Ping have always looked nice because of that painted bottom groove. You can see all the loft, but having a slightly deeper head, I think just makes it visually just feel a bit more comfortable getting it airborne, and something that they've done quite well without losing the essence of the shaping that Ping have always had. Through the woods, another bit of info that our rep gave me this morning before we looked at these is actually shaft weights across the woods have come down in the Altas, in the Alta CB range that Ping uses their stock shaft, or one of their stock shafts. The dead weight of shaft is down a few grams. So actually across the board on the Alta range, if you put the head and the shaft together, they have a little bit of a plug at the back of the shaft as well, but the weight on every single aspect has come down. Now, yes, there's some weight gone back into the back weight here, but it's about 12 or 13 grams in total weight that's been lost through using the tech or a lighter weight shaft. Granted, 7 have gone back in, so they're about 5 grams lighter in total, but their stock length has gone up a little bit, particularly in drivers, 46 inches, which is quite long. We tend not to build above 45 really because of strike consistency, but Ping have decided to go that little bit longer, a little bit more club speed with the extra stability achieved from the changes in structure. In principle, they're going for we can save ball speed across the face or maintain ball speed across the face, which gives you a bit more margin of error and potentially utilise the longer shaft weight a little bit. So that's the woods and hybrids, and we'll have a little look at the iron. So G440 range of irons. I want to take this all the way out of the bag. So the G series of irons, something that Ping have always been very, very successful with from a forgiveness and a playability point of view. So what have they done this time around? Now, they've stated that in the game improvement category, which this would be classed as, distance is extremely important from a strokes gained point of view. So there's only so much you can do with loft. The 6-iron loft on the 440 range as standard is 25.5, which in kind of old money is not far off a 4-iron. So it's a strong loft anyway. So they can't really push loft very far to gain distance. So the only ways of doing it are ball speed off the face and height. So key takeaways from this is, as a head, it's a little bit neater than the G430. So two of the aspects are it's a very, very marginally shorter blade length. Hard to see that really. However, one of the things they've done is shallowed the face. I'm going to grab, we've got the 430 head here, and if I hold them up side by side, should be able to see the height of the 430 on the left as you look at it, that the top of the club sits lower than the 440 on your right. So by shallowing the head out, they've actually saved mass, saved material. So there's less material used, so less weight, which means they've been able to reposition it to the perimeter to keep the forgiveness on a smaller frame shape. The other aspect is, I think it's a 9% thinner face. So that again, weight saves, that's ball speed.
Yeah.
You can put mass down the bottom, that creates height. Again, you've had a hit of these, seen the flight outdoors, I've seen a couple of numbers off of it. They didn't actually have the 440 iron head to hit with, it was a sample when I saw it first, this is a production one. But you know, noticeable in terms of flight, did you feel? It's going to pick it up really
definitely
easily?
Popped it a little bit higher. It felt like as well that it picked the ball up really well if you had it on a low strike, which makes sense, obviously pulling that CG position a little bit lower in the face. So you didn't really see that kind of really spinny ball. It held flight really nice. Strong on ball speed as well, as you'd expect with that kind of slightly stronger loft.
Yeah, and that's the key thing, is that there's one thing getting more ball speed and distance, but again, part of their MO with this range is gain distance whilst keeping stopping power. And ultimately, you know, these heads are not that spinny. If you take, you know, a blade head spins a lot more than this head relative to loft, which sounds counterintuitive, but because of the amount of mass low on the head, it actually gears spin off. So you've got to create the height to get stopping power. So ironically, that shallower head is a big part of doing that. Thinner face, more ball speed, and that combination of the two of getting the CG down, the ball speed up, allows, without actually pushing loft very far at all, to gain height and to actually gain ball speed. And that's really where Ping have gone to with this head. More ball speed from the thinner face, more height from the lower CG in the shallower head. Retentions in tech of the pure flex on the back, and this is a badge in the back that has multiple sections, 4 sections to it, that actually flexes. It's on the back of the face to help dampen the sound down, and this one has a chromed plating to it as well, partly to do with visuals, partly to do with the acoustics, but allows the face to flex because of the structure, the multiple piece structure to it, but quietens that sound down. And certainly this is, I think in their own words, it's a kind of a much more a player's style shape, but with Ping's terminology, with confidence. Their confidence is in the eye of the beholder. Some players will actually may not like the slightly neater head shape, and again there'll be an image comparing the 430 and the 440 side by side from a dress position. But overall, it's actually quite a neat head shape for the style of, the kind of position of the head in the market.
Yeah, but I think as well that they've not managed to lose any forgiveness with the head. They've still got, you know, obviously with the flex in the back of the head as well. It's definitely managed to, on your off-centre strikes, you're not really losing too much from it, even with that slightly neater head shape. Overall though, I think it's a really solid head. I think that the numbers that it did show were really impressive, and you could definitely see a difference in flight. It definitely picked up a lot higher than the previous model.
And I think sound-wise, again, this is a sort of a trend across the range.
Definitely muted.
Going for less of that harsh. Again, the 430 went, and it had good ball speed, but it sounded harsh, and that certainly quietened down on this. The other head, I mean, they do it in 4 through pitch wedge, U wedge, 52 and 56. So 52's, you know, traditional kind of gap wedge loft. So because of the strength of the lofts on the main body of the irons, there's a sort of pitch wedge, a second wedge, then your gap wedge and the sand wedge. The sand wedge, they've changed the head shape a little bit. So traditionally on these sort of heads, they've been quite clumsy, quite big, wide soles, and just a little bit too much going on the heel side. What they've done with the 56 in this model is go back more to like the i2 is their kind of flagship for this head. Much neater on the heel side, and actually a slimmer hosel, which helps it move through the sand a little bit more easily, a little more readily, but just a more versatile head shape. I think that's always been a bit of a critique of mine, certainly of the set sand wedges, and Ping have addressed that with this model.
You know, I didn't actually have a hit the sand wedge, so I can't say too much of how it felt, but I did have a look at it and seen what they're trying to do anyways. They're trying to make it a little bit easier, especially out of the sand, to be able to use it around about the greens, and bring back a bit of nostalgia, I think, with the i2 look as well. Something that's, as you said, is very much related to the aesthetic of Ping. Yeah,
pretty iconic for Ping.
Absolutely.
Such a, you know, a head that those of us of a certain age remember. Looks so different, but I think the sole shaping in particular is something that I think had been lost a little bit over the years, and that narrow heel, narrow hosel versatility of the head in different lies should be a big improvement. So that gives you the broad features of the new Ping models this year. I hope you've enjoyed the video. We'll be doing performance comparisons between the Ping and other models, the 430 and the 440, so there will be videos coming out in the coming months giving you that kind of info as well. So if you've enjoyed this video, there'll be more performance reviews coming up, more new product reviews coming up as well as the launches come out. So check the rest of the YouTube content, like, subscribe, and we'll see you very soon.